10 years ago, my brother had some stomach pains,
I've been in prison now for 10.5 years.
and it weren't till the cancer had got to stage 4 that he found out what actually was wrong with him. He started chemo and was told that he had a good chance of beating it, that he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma,
But in 2007 my mum caught cancer.
and he lost his battle a year afterwards.
I found out that I had cancer in late 2004.
October 2009, and by that point I'd been in prison about 10 years.
And felt a lump on one of my testicles.
They quite quickly told me I had a blockage in my bowel, which, given my age and everything else, is pretty likely to be cancer.
Slightly panicked. Made an appointment to see the doctor. Got a referral to hospital. Had all the scans and the tests. And a couple of weeks later, I had to go back and was told that I had testicular cancer.
And I was diagnosed with terminal bowel cancer.
My auntie when she died of lung cancer.
And they then gave me some scans and told me that I also had a large number of tumours in my liver.
I was diagnosed with cancer within the spinal cord about 5 years ago.
And she didn't have a chemo or anything. She didn't want no support. She just wanted to go. That's the way peacefully.
My brother was diagnosed with cancer and died from it.
Stories about my mother-in-law. Back in 2006, she was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Now, if he'd have carried on seeing the doctor in the first place and pushed it through and rattled to me, he'd still be here today.
My mother has had cancer 3 times.
It's one of those cancers, the earlier you catch it, like most cancers, you've more chance you've got of beating it.
And she says she's not dying with cancer, she's living with it.
And it smashed me at the time, it really smashed me.
So here I am again in jail, and this time it's my wife who's got cancer.
You know, it was an aggressive cancer. It spread throughout the whole body because she's one of these people who she wouldn't go to the doctors. You know, if she had something wrong with her, she didn't like going to the doctors at all.
I was embarrassed to talk about going to the toilet, to be honest. I was embarrassed to talk about pain that I'd had for quite some time.
When I first went to my doctor, they told me that I had indigestion. Then they told me I was overweight.
In the end, they thought I had IBS, so they gave me that as a diagnosis, and I read up a lot about it.
Then they told me a whole other series of stuff, and eventually someone half competent decided, well, you better go for an MRI scan.
You know, they're kind of good because they'll get specialist nurses and oncologists and surgeons and all kinds of people, Macmillan nurses, to come and try and kind of gently convince you that you're going to die, you know, but it was pretty difficult to accept.
When my brother was diagnosed with cancer, it was different in that people, I don't think they knew how to talk about it.
The more we talk about cancer, the better.
In both cases, he delayed going and getting something done about it. And who knows, if we'd gone that little bit earlier, things might have been different.
I was in a good establishment where I got lots of help, I got lots of support. The prison at the time, it took me to see my mum before she died. It took me to the funeral.
But I don't know, it's not something that, you know, when you're going through it, that you really want to talk about. It's a private matter. It's a point of I don't know. You're feeling. In my case, I felt embarrassed because it was one of my testicles. It's not something that I really wanted to talk about.
It had affected me. I wasn't sleeping particularly well, and I was actually stood in my cell, and I heard a noise behind me, and I saw a light. So there was an officer actually looking in.
While I was in jail, the support that I got, it was mainly just off the chaplain, really, to support me with my feelings and that.
And she actually said, if you've got any problems with it, get on the bell and let me know. And just that little thing was enough.
I had an operation to remove one of the testicles. I went through chemotherapy for about 8 to 10 weeks.
So after I was admitted, I had an emergency operation on my abdomen to remove part of my bowel.
and then I had to have yearly checkups after that for the next 5 years.
So I was in hospital for a couple of weeks and then I started a course of chemotherapy.
Personally, I wouldn't like to get it. I worry about my wife getting it and her sister getting it, because with it being breast cancer, sometimes it's hereditary.
I got this message through a telephone in the prison, and that phone haunted me. The day I got that news, I never expected it. Of all the worst things in my world, that was the worst day of my life, and I just sort of broke down on that phone. And ever since then, every time I look at the phone, these prison phones, they just remind me of that hell I went through. And that's where I am now. So
now I've had 2 operations and I've had 2 lots of chemotherapy, and I don't really know. I've got a scan a week on Monday, a CT scan, and I kind of gave up. I suppose I gave up a little while ago worrying about it. I gave up a little while ago worrying about whether I'm going to get out of prison.
You know, I want to get out of prison. I don't want to die in prison.
Whether I'm going to be okay. So I'll go for a scan a week on Monday, and then whatever the results are, I'll find out in a couple of weeks and I'll deal with it, you know.
There is no remission for my cancer as such. My cancer, because it's wrapped around the spinal cord itself, they removed a fair amount of the cancer. But I can't have chemo and I can't have radiotherapy because of where it is.
My outcome is I've been given the all clear.
The cancer itself remains, and all we can do is monitor the growth of the cancer through an MRI scan, and that's what I do every 12, 18 months.
I've been all clear for the last 7 years. So, yeah, my life's in a better place than it was in 2004.
You know, I know there's at least one person who's been told, you know, you've only got a couple of years left. You know what I mean? So it's all around us. You know, everybody knows somebody or has somebody who's been affected by it at some point or other. You know what I mean? It's a disease, a killer disease that affects everyone.
I think my biggest fear though isn't catching cancer. My biggest fear is it not being detected early enough. I think nowadays with most cancers, if you get it early enough, you've got a damn good chance of survival.
So that's the other big thing from what we're trying to do, is to convince people to go to the doctor that little bit early. Go and bother them if necessary. Go and tell them that something's not right. And if they don't get the answer that they're hoping for, go back again and say, you know, things are still not right.
We talk about it and people stop becoming afraid of it, just accept it as is, it's there, rather than unspoken word. It's the same with doctors. The more we say to our doctor, look, I am not well, will you check me for this, will you check me? Eventually he's going to give in and check you for it, even just to keep you quiet.
I would say to anybody in the situation where they believe they have any type of cancer, keep badgering your doctor. Keep going back there, try and put pressure on them over and over.
Seek advice. Get your family close.
If there's nothing that they can't be, you've got to demand a scan. They don't seem that willing to give people scans.
If I found out some of the symptoms, I would make sure I tell the doctor ASAP.
With my brother, if they'd have scanned him, they would have seen the tumours in him the first time straight away. And again with my wife, if she'd have had a scan the first time that they found it would have been small enough to treat.
If anybody thinks they've got a problem or they think something's wrong with them, I'd say go and get it checked out.
Just be aware, but make sure, you know, and there's an old saying, oily wheels get squeaky wheels get oiled, you know, so you've got to complain and keep going until you get to the bottom of it.
You know, don't be scared, you know, it's best off if you go and get checked out and it's nothing, that's great, but if you sit back and you think, well, I'm not feeling too good, I'm feeling a little bit lethargic, or I just don't feel myself. If you sit back and do nothing about it, you know, it could be something bad. It might be nothing, but if you don't check it out, you ain't got to know.
Because there's some reason why you're ill for months on end. You know, if it hasn't gone within a week or so, there's some other reason there.
So I think, get yourself a bit clued up about what the symptoms are, if you're worried about things, and describe things accurately to a doctor and be honest about it. So if you've got a problem in an embarrassing area, be quite specific what you're talking about, you know.
I would say to anyone who discovers that they have a lump, to get themselves the healthcare as soon as possible.
And the earlier you catch it, the more likely you are to get that result.